economic recovery is showing some signs of slowing down, and some are questioning whether we need a second stimulus package. Here to debate that question are Ralph Martire with the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability and Rebel Cole of DePaul University. Welcome back to both of you.
Thank you.
Let's go over the numbers here. Out of a total of an $862 billion economic stimulus package, $492 billion has been spent, $370 billion is remaining left over. Ralph, let's start with you. Are you surprised that more than a year later, so much money is still left over?
You know, not really. I mean, they intended to spend it out over 3 years. A lot of these projects that they claimed were shovel ready were not shovel ready, and we all know that, especially the bigger infrastructure problems. So there was bound to be a delay. There's also been some reporting problems, I think, and that has been very well documented. I mean, people are misreporting not only the money they've received and expended, but the jobs created, et cetera, both under and over reporting. So there's been some reporting issues on, as you would expect with any program this big, but no, I'm not surprised.
So, Rebel, what should we do with that billions of dollars remaining?
I think we've run about a $2 trillion deficit since Obama's taken office, and as they like to say in Washington, when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. We've already got $300+ billion in stimulus on the books, and the deficit spending really amounts to another $1 trillion a year in stimulus package. So, you know, let's stop digging and spend the money we've already got allocated.
But what about a payroll tax for middle Americans?
I think the best possible solution right now would be to suspend the payroll tax. I think it would put money in the pockets of workers. It would reduce the cost of hiring new workers. The biggest problem we have right now is unemployment. And that would be perhaps the best way to combat unemployment, by making it cheaper for small businesses to hire workers. Small business account for about 2/3 of all job growth. Small businesses are hurting. The regulatory reforms and healthcare mandates are hurting small businesses. So we need to do something to stimulate job growth, and that would be a great place to start.
Well, small businesses also account for about 2/3 of all job loss, too. So on net, I mean, they are very destructive and creative at the same time. And I agree that employment is the biggest issue. I don't think anyone can look at the employment levels in this nation and say that's not the biggest issue. It's how you deal with it. If you look from February to now, what you see is consumer spending is up by $100 billion in that period, but wages and salaries are down. The only reason consumer spending is up is because of money coming into households through the stimulus program one way or another. So I think what we have to do is make sure that consumer spending continues to drive economic growth by subsidizing individuals that don't have jobs, and or state governments, which I think is very effective, and let them keep their payrolls going for police and fire and teachers, et cetera, because consumer spending is 2/3 of our economy. If that dips, it creates huge problems, and it's going to dip in a tight employment situation like we have now. So those stimulus programs focused on, number one, state to the aid, number two, unemployment insurance, and I think then number three, tax credits to businesses who actually hire people would be how I would like to see the money mostly directed.
Okay, why are some saying that we may need another economic stimulus package, Rebel?
Well, because the economy is still in very precarious shape. We haven't fixed the underlying problems that caused this recession. It was housing-led. Housing is still in terrible trouble. We have 7 million borrowers who are delinquent on their mortgages, representing almost $2 trillion in mortgage assets. That is being complicated by the unemployment, which is still sticking around 9.5%. The banking system is still in terrible trouble. The estimates are as many as 3,000 community banks could be close to going under. We've closed almost 300 banks since the crisis has begun. Until we solve the problems in our banking system and make credit available to small businesses so that they can borrow, we're going to be in trouble. And when the government is borrowing this much money, it's crowding out private investment, which, you know, is defeating the whole purpose of the stimulus plan.
Although that's not happening right now. It's not crowding out private investment. I mean, business and corporate profitability is soaring. It's doing just fine.
Yes,
corporate profitability is doing just fine. And I tell you, we had such a drop in value or perceived value in the marketplace when the real estate industry crashed, that there's a lot of ground to make up. And while I agree completely, the immediate cause of this crisis was the two-part mortgage foreclosure crisis and all that other stuff there, and the financial industry crisis, where we had all those derivatives, et cetera, that were backed by debt, not equity, et cetera. The real long-term problem is that for 20 years now, 80% of the country has had flat or declining wages after inflation. That strains family. When Bush 2 took office in the year 2000, wages were almost half of GDP. When he left office in 2008, they were 46% of GDP. That's $487 billion less in people's pockets.
It's always Bush's fault. The problem is this administration has been all about Wall Street and has left Main Street to rot. Unemployment, 9.5%. Small business is not hiring. We've got to deal with that. Housing, we've got to deal with that. Instead of bailing out the big banks and rescuing them and rescuing Wall Street, we've got to help Main Street.
Let me get your take. Do we need another economic stimulus package, even though we've got $370 billion left over?
I think we do, and we think we need to keep it up to ensure we don't do a double-dip recession or even worse, drop into a depression. And I think it has to be focused on those areas I said: aid to the states, unemployment insurance, and job credits for businesses that create jobs, so we can address the employment issue.
Last words.
Let's return the money to the taxpayers, especially to the workers making less than $100,000 a year. Tax cuts have a 3-to-1 advantage over government spending.
Okay, thanks so much. Rebel Cole of DePaul University and Ralph Martire with the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability. Thank you.